project is the Promise of Pura Vida, Improving Life for Refugees in Costa Rica. We are Stephanie, Sara, Cayla, and Kelly. And our project analyzes challenges for refugees in Costa Rica and provides policy recommendations for how to better provide them with the promise of Pura Vida, which is a phrase that describes the worry-free lifestyle of Costa Ricans. So Costa Rica continues accepting refugees, but a surge in applications last year has put them in a difficult position, and current policies in the country don't address their needs as well as they could and leave the refugees vulnerable.
So our research is based on a desk-based literature review as well as an on-site visit to San Jose, Costa Rica, and interviews. Our virtual interviews were done through online calling, email exchange, and teleconferences, and our in-person interviews were done with policy and research experts in DC as well as in San Jose. Here you can see some of our meetings. There's Cayla in front of the Refugee Unit and the International Organization for Migration. UNHCR is here. US Embassy is not pictured, and we also got to meet with local NGOs like Senderos, which is the picture right there. We also got to speak with 3 refugees and did a couple of interviews with them, 2 of which were from El Salvador and 1 was from Colombia. So through our research, we decided to focus on refugees coming out of the Northern Triangle, which are the countries of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, which you see highlighted there. We chose this because there's high crime rates there as well as gang violence. So these refugees are not only going north to the US and Mexico, but now also south to the popular destination of Costa Rica.
Okay, and as you can see here, this is a chart given to us by DGME, which is the Costa Rican Refugee Unit. And as you can see, over the last few years, the numbers have pretty much exploded, and over the last year, it's doubled. And a lot of those, the majority of those, that 4,000 are people from Central America, from the Northern Triangle countries, and that's particularly why we decided to focus on that.
So we identified 4 areas of focus where policies should be changed in order to better address the needs of refugees living in Costa Rica. So those 4 areas are improving Costa Rican protection policies for refugees, US policy and regional collaboration in Central America, expanding the Costa Rican Refugee Unit operating capacity, and establishing outreach campaigns concerning refugees. And now we're going to go through each of these one by one and identify what is currently being done, as well as what we believe would be able to address the shortfalls.
So we're going to start with Costa Rican protection policies and the protection landscape for refugees in Costa Rica right now. Refugees currently are being given the same rights as permanent residents and citizens of Costa Rica, which is the right to work, the right to education, free mobility, amongst other things. But unfortunately, as of now, generalized violence and victimization by gangs is not a criteria for asylum or refugee status. Additionally, Costa Rica is considered one of the safer countries in the region for LGBTI individuals, as it's a signatory for the Brazil Declaration, which specifies that LGBTI people constitute a vulnerable group that must be protected. But in practice, it remains extremely difficult for these individuals to actually gain asylum there. So adding to this issue are identification cards. ID cards signify your residency status. They're given to you based on your residency status in Costa Rica, and residency status dictates the type of work that you can obtain in the country. So basically what ends up happening is that the labeling on your ID card is paramount to the type of work that you can obtain in Costa Rica. Here we have an example of the refugee card, the refugee ID card. And you can see here it says Categoría Especial Libre Condición, and that means special category free status. To someone who hasn't been explained what that means, which is no one explains what that means to anyone, it's just confusing and it just causes discrimination, whereas it should be signifying this person is a refugee, but they have all the same rights as a citizen. Moreover, for transgendered individuals, they're required to have their birth name written on their card. If they would like to put their chosen name on their card, they have to go to a judge, and if the judge approves that change, they can add another line, which basically signifies also known as, and then put their chosen name. of course, this is an indication of their transgendered identity, more discrimination ensues and prejudice follows. So basically, finding employment for refugees is hindered by a high unemployment rate in the country, which is now almost at 10%, one of the higher percentages in the region. Their status as a refugee in this country that largely favors local workers, and for transgendered individuals, there's the added hindrance of their identity as a transgendered individual. So our recommendations, we have a few. We recommend updating asylum guidelines, recognizing that generalized violence and victimization by gangs is paramount to consider as an asylum criteria in this region where so many people are losing their lives every day and leaving the northern country because of this specific reason. We also suggest making explicit protections for LGBTI individuals as they face specific violence in the region. Second, we recommend standardizing identification cards, as it would require little change, just a simple re-evaluation of the design, but would reap important benefits for the cardholders as mentioned previously. And third, providing temporary working cards to refugees while they wait their processing. These wait times are long, and since they cannot work while they're waiting their asylum claims to be processed, it needs to be addressed how they can work legally while they're waiting this processing.
So our second area of focus is U.S. policy and regional collaboration in Central America. In terms of U.S. policy, most policy right now focuses on aid packages for the Northern Triangle countries, which are designed to try to improve the living conditions there in order to slow migration from the Northern Triangle to the U.S. So one such aid package is the Alliance for Prosperity, which is a $20 billion plan aimed to reduce the migrants' incentives to leave their home countries by prioritizing a cause-based approach. And a similar package is the Central America Regional Security Initiative, or CARSI, which is also designed to improve security and rule of law in Central America. And the U.S. gave over $1 billion to the region through this aid package between 2008 and 2015. So in terms of regional collaboration on migration and security issues in Central America is underdeveloped, but at the same time evolving. Last year, the Organization of American States and UNHCR organized a summit in San Jose, Costa Rica, to discuss the growing phenomenon of mixed migration movements and the forced displacement of those fleeing criminal groups in the Northern Triangle. Participants at the summit included most of the Central American states, as well as the US and Canada. However, Venezuela and Nicaragua were noticeably absent from the summit. The meeting produced what's known as a San Jose Action Statement, where all of the participants recognize a host of migration and security issues and make a list of promises to improve regional collaboration on those issues. So in terms of our recommendations, first, we recommend that the U.S. include support for Costa Rica in U.S. aid for Central America proactively, as Costa Rica is, as we've explained, a primary destination for a lot of migrants fleeing from the Northern Triangle. And because the aid packages that are going only to the Northern Triangle have been at the least ineffective and sometimes even counterproductive. And this would be a win-win situation because it would help bolster Costa Rica, maintain their stability and their place as perhaps the most stable country in Central America, and at the same time make it a more popular destination from the U.S. perspective, as opposed to migrants coming more and more to the U.S. The second, in terms of regional collaboration, we encourage the signatories of the San Jose Action Statement to act on the promises that they made in the pact last year and continue to develop their collaboration on migration and security. And our big recommendation is for UNHCR, the Organization of American States, and the states of the region to encourage Nicaragua and Venezuela to join the agreement because they're also, outside of the Northern Triangle, some of the largest source countries for refugees and migrants to Costa Rica, and no regional plan on migration and security will be fully effective without them on board as well.
So, you may be wondering what this is a picture of. This is actually the Refugee Unit for the entire country of Costa Rica. So our third section deals with the Costa Rican Refugee Unit operating capacity. So there's been a huge increase in asylum applications recently, and there are only 4 people working in the Refugee Unit office, with 2 lawyers doing all of the interviews for every person who decides to come to Costa Rica and apply for asylum. So currently, as a result, the government is completely overwhelmed in terms of actually processing these applications in a timely manner, which is particularly problematic because as these applications are actually being processed, people can't work. So one of our recommendations is to address the lack of resources within the Costa Rican Refugee Unit. The first would be to hire more staff. Having that few people for an entire country is frankly shocking and a little disturbing. So recently, Costa Rican President Oscar Solis visited the Inter-American Dialogue and described some of the fiscal reforms that his administration has been pushing for. And one of the things that he spoke about was limiting tax evasion, which is very popular in Costa Rica. And we believe that if these reforms are successful, that some of those resources could be used in order to fund additional staff members in the office, with additional benefits, of course, coming about from the applications being processed more timely and migrants being able to regularize their status and contribute to the economy. So another one of our recommendations would be to engage volunteers. Some of the volunteers that we imagine could be engaged through this process would be former settled refugees, of course, as well as these volunteer organizations, some of the logos of which you can see here. They're US-based organizations that actually already do work in Costa Rica, so they could be engaged on that front. And additionally, we would like to sort of tap into the emerging pro bono legal culture within the country. So a couple more recommendations that we would like to address through the Refugee Unit would be to digitize the asylum application process. And as you can see here, there are a whole bunch of boxes full of paper applications. That's particularly problematic when you think about how few people actually work in that office and have to deal with a high volume of paper applications. And so one of the things that we envision being able to be done is to utilize some of the smartphone technology, which pretty much every refugee coming in has access to, so that they would be able to fill out these applications online and make the process more efficient. Now, the second recommendation, similarly, is that we would like to be able to identify candidates for humanitarian visas early. There's a really not great approval rating of 20%, and Costa Rica is actually known as a country that doesn't really deport anybody. So we would like to see candidates being identified early for this visa so that they would be able to regularize their status and be able to contribute to their new country.
Okay, so our fourth and final policy recommendation comes in the form of outreach campaigns concerning refugees. So just a quick overview of the current policy. The current policy regarding outreach campaigns is very kind of underdeveloped. It's very relying on traditional outreach methods, such as the one on the left. A lot of pamphlets and posters are at these organizations in San Jose and as well as in the shelters near the borders. But more could be done to address refugee issues with a shift to more digital technology, so social media and smartphone applications. So currently what they have in terms of outreach as far as newer technologies go, so the apps are very, very new. Not every organization had them, but the few that did They were very new, they were testing, and they were more for tracking migration flows as opposed to offering services. And also too, just to point out, the picture on the right is from one of the organizations that we went to. And it's saying, you know, are you a refugee, or are you looking for refugee status? You know, visit this website or you know, scan this code with your smartphone. But when we tried it, it didn't work, and the link was broken. So, you know, there's a lot of room for improvement in these areas. And when it comes to social media, time and time again, every organization that we talk to, government agencies, really stress the importance and the vitalness of you know, social media, but you know, none of them had any campaigns to speak of. So that's really an area that could be improved upon. All right, so our recommendations. When it comes to recommendations, we have two major recommendations. One is a shift to social media outreach, and the other is a expansion to smartphone applications. So, you know, as previously mentioned, there's a basic foundation laid right now, but there really needs to be expansion and improvement, especially when it comes to applications and social media. And you know, as previously mentioned, you know, by Stephanie, everybody has a smartphone. You know, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Most people, the vast majority of people, have smartphones. You know, everybody that we saw in the waiting room, didn't matter how they were dressed, didn't matter who they were, what age they were, they all had smartphones. So this could really ease up the refugee process by providing information on services, and even potentially digitizing the part of the refugee application process. By, you know, and basically easing up the burden on the refugee unit for the country. In addition, when it comes to applications, it's a lot easier, it's a lot more cost effective. There are organizations that will provide pro bono services and do free application development. For instance, there's an organization in California, student organization, that provides free application development for nonprofit organizations, so that could definitely be utilized in this situation. And in addition, too, just to point out, this was also from one of the organizations that we went to. There's a nice arrow there. Just to point out, like, under their needs and their challenges, one of them was having a mobile app for the organization. So, just to point out the importance there. And also, these applications could provide, you know, a way of giving constant feedback and analysis. You know, what's working, what are people looking at, things like that.
So in sum, we have 4 categories of recommendations, one being strengthening protection for refugees, another being strengthening U.S. policy and regional collaboration, then improving the capacity of the Refugee Unit in San Jose, and also outreach campaigns concerning refugee issues. And you can see the more specific recommendations under each one. So I think
That's it.
Thank you.
All right.